The morning sun cast long shadows across the hospital parking lot as William sat in his car, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles had turned white. He had been sitting there for 20 minutes, unable to find the courage to walk through those glass doors that would lead him back to Catherine's room. The doctors had been clear yesterday. They had done everything they could. Now it was just a matter of time. William closed his eyes and tried to remember Catherine as she was just 6 months ago. Her laugh had filled their small apartment on Maple Street, bright and musical like wind chimes in a summer breeze. She would dance around their tiny kitchen while making breakfast, her auburn hair catching the light from their window. Those were the days when their biggest worry was whether they could afford to go out for dinner on Friday nights. Cancer. The word still felt foreign in his mouth, like a language he never wanted to learn. It had started with what seemed like a simple cough that wouldn't go away. Catherine, always the optimist, had joked about it. "Maybe I'm allergic to your cooking," she had teased him one evening as she dissolved another cough drop in her mouth. They had both laughed, but William had noticed the way her shoulders shook with each cough, how it seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her chest. The first doctor's visit had been routine. Catherine had gone alone because William was working double shifts at the construction site, trying to save money for the engagement ring he had been secretly planning to buy. She came home with a prescription for antibiotics and a smile that seemed just a little too bright. "Just a stubborn infection," she had said. But William noticed she didn't meet his eyes when she said it. 3 weeks later, when the antibiotics hadn't helped and the cough had gotten worse, they went to see Dr. Martinez together. William remembered sitting in the waiting room, Catherine's hand in his, both of them making nervous jokes about the outdated magazines and the fish tank that needed cleaning. They had no idea their world was about to collapse. Dr. Martinez was a kind woman with gentle eyes, but even her kindness couldn't soften the blow of what she had to tell them. The X-ray showed something that shouldn't be there. They needed more tests, more waiting, more hoping against hope that it would turn out to be nothing serious. But it wasn't nothing. The biopsy results came back on a Tuesday afternoon in March. William had taken the day off work to be with Catherine, sensing somehow that this would be important. They sat together in Dr. Martinez's office, the same office where they had been just 2 weeks before, but everything felt different now. The air seemed thicker, harder to breathe. "It's lung cancer," Dr. Martinez had said, her voice professional but not unkind. "Stage 3. We caught it before it spread to other organs, which is good news. We have options." Options. William had focused on that word. Options meant choices. Choices meant hope. They could fight this. Catherine had been quiet during the doctor's explanation of treatment plans and survival rates. She asked practical questions about work and insurance and how long the treatments would take. William loved her for her strength, but he also worried about the wall she seemed to be building around herself, brick by brick, with each piece of medical information they received. The next few months had been a blur of chemotherapy sessions, radiation appointments, and medical bills that seemed to multiply like weeds. Catherine had lost her beautiful auburn hair, but William thought she looked even more beautiful bald, her large green eyes more prominent than ever. She had laughed when he told her this, the first real laugh he had heard from her in weeks. "You're just saying that because you have to," she had said, running her hand over her smooth scalp. "No," William had replied, meaning every word. "I'm saying it because it's true. You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, with or without hair." They had created new routines around the treatments. William would drive Catherine to her appointments, and they would stop for ice cream afterward if she was feeling well enough. She had developed a craving for mint chocolate chip, something she had never liked before. "Cancer has at least given me better taste in ice cream," she would joke, and William would laugh because he knew she needed him to, even when his heart was breaking. The treatments had seemed to be working at first. The tumors had shrunk, and Dr. Martinez had been cautiously optimistic. Catherine had started talking about the future again, about the vacation they would take when she was better, about maybe getting a dog, about all the things they would do when this nightmare was over. But cancer, William had learned, was a liar and a thief. Just when it seemed to be retreating, it came back stronger and angrier than before. The tumors had grown despite the treatments, and new ones had appeared. Dr. Martinez's optimism had faded to professional concern, then to gentle warnings about what they needed to prepare for. "How long?" William had asked during their last meeting with the doctor, Catherine's hand cold in his. "It's hard to say exactly," Dr. Martinez had replied. "Weeks, maybe a month or 2 if we're lucky. The important thing now is to focus on quality of life and making sure Catherine is as comfortable as possible." quality of life, comfortable as possible. These were phrases William had never imagined having to think about in relation to Catherine. She was only 26 years old. They were supposed to have decades together, supposed to grow old and gray side by side. Now, sitting in the hospital parking lot, William forced himself to open the car door. Catherine was waiting for him upstairs, and he had promised her he would be there every step of the way. He wouldn't break that promise now, no matter how much it hurt to see her getting smaller and frilier each day. The elevator ride to the 4th floor seemed to take forever. William had memorized every scratch on the metal walls, every button, every sound the old elevator made as it climbed. He had been making this trip every day for the past 2 weeks, ever since Catherine had been admitted for the last time. Room 427. The number had become as familiar to him as his own address. He knocked gently before entering, even though Catherine had told him he didn't need to. Some habits were hard to break, and treating her with the same courtesy he always had seemed important somehow. Catherine was awake, propped up against several pillows, looking out the window at the courtyard below. She turned when she heard him come in, and her face lit up with the same smile that had made him fall in love with her 3 years ago at the coffee shop where they had first met. "You're late," she said, but there was no accusation in her voice, only warmth. "Sorry," William replied, settling into the chair beside her bed that had become his second home. Traffic was terrible. It was a lie, and they both knew it. The truth was that each morning it became harder for him to walk through those doors, harder to pretend that everything was going to be okay when they both knew it wasn't. Catherine reached for his hand, her fingers thin and cool but still capable of making his heart race just by touching him. "I was watching the birds in the courtyard," she said. "There's a robin building a nest in the oak tree. She's been working on it all morning." William looked out the window and saw the small brown bird Catherine was talking about, flying back and forth with twigs and bits of string. "She's getting ready for spring," he said. "Yes," Catherine agreed. "New beginnings." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the robin work. William wanted to memorize everything about this moment. The way the morning light fell across Catherine's face, the sound of her breathing, the feeling of her hand in his. He had been trying to memorize everything lately, storing up these moments like treasures he could carry with him. "The nurses say I might be able to go home for a few days next week," Catherine said eventually. "If I'm feeling strong enough." Home. Their little apartment on Maple Street seemed like something from another lifetime now. William tried to imagine Catherine there again, in their own bed instead of this narrow hospital bed, but the image wouldn't quite form in his mind. "That would be wonderful," he said, and meant it. If Catherine wanted to go home, he would make it happen, even if it meant hiring round-the-clock nurses and turning their bedroom into a mini hospital room. "I want to see the garden," Catherine continued. "I planted those tulip bulbs last fall, remember? Before we knew about the cancer. I want to see if they came up." William remembered. Catherine had spent an entire Saturday afternoon planting bulbs in the small patch of earth behind their building, her cheeks pink from the cold October air. She had been so excited about the prospect of spring flowers, talking about all the colors they would see when the bulbs bloomed. "I'm sure they're beautiful," William said. "Mrs. Peterson from upstairs has been watering them for you." This was true. Their elderly neighbor had been taking care of the garden all winter, checking on it almost daily and sending William regular updates about any signs of growth. It was a small kindness, but it meant everything to both of them. Catherine smiled. "She's sweet. I want to thank her properly when I get home." When, not if. Catherine still talked about the future as if it was a certainty, as if the doctors were wrong, and she would beat this thing through sheer force of will. William loved her for her optimism even as it broke his heart. He wanted to believe it too, wanted to imagine a future where they would grow old together, where this would all just be a terrible memory they would share with their grandchildren someday. But he had seen the latest test results. He had talked to Dr. Martinez when Catherine was sleeping. He knew what the doctors knew, what Catherine herself probably knew deep down but refused to acknowledge. Tom was running out, and running out fast. A nurse came in to check Catherine's vital signs, a cheerful woman named Rosa who had been taking care of Catherine since she was admitted. Rosa always had a smile and a kind word, and William was grateful for her gentle presence during these difficult days. "How are we feeling today?" Rosa asked as she wrapped the blood pressure cuff around Catherine's arm. "Better," Catherine replied, and William could hear her trying to put energy into her voice that she didn't really have. "I think I might be able to eat something substantial for lunch." Rosa smiled encouragingly, but William caught the quick glance she gave him when Catherine wasn't looking. It was the same look Dr. Martinez had been giving him lately, The look that said they all knew something Catherine either didn't know or was choosing not to accept. After Rosa left, Catherine turned back to the window. The robin was still working on her nest, and more birds had joined her in the courtyard. Spring was coming, whether Catherine would be there to see it or not. "William," Catherine said quietly, still looking out the window. "I need to tell you something." Something in her tone made William's chest tighten with anxiety. "What is it?" Catherine turned to face him, and, for the first time in weeks, her smile faltered. "I know what the doctors told you yesterday, when you thought I was asleep." William felt his heart stop. He had been so careful, so determined to protect her from the worst of the news. But Catherine had always been intuitive, always able to read him like a book. "Catherine, it's okay," she interrupted gently. "I'm not angry that you tried to spare me. I love you for wanting to protect me, even from the truth. But we need to talk about what comes next. We need to talk about how we're going to say goodbye." The word hung in the air between them like a physical thing, heavy and final. Goodbye. William had been avoiding even thinking that word, but now Catherine had said it out loud, and there was no going back. "We don't have to talk about that yet," William said, his voice rough. "The doctors could be wrong. You might get stronger. There might be other treatments." "William." Catherine's voice was firm but kind. "Look at me." He met her eyes, those beautiful green eyes that had been the first thing he noticed about her when they met. They were clear and calm, and in them he saw that she had already accepted what he was still trying to deny. "I'm dying," she said simply, "and we both know it. Fighting that truth won't change it, and it's just going to waste the time we have left. I don't want to waste any more time." William felt tears he had been holding back for weeks start to fall. He put his head down on the bed beside Catherine's hand, and she stroked his hair the way she used to when he had a hard day at work. "I can't do this without you," he whispered. "Yes, you can," Catherine replied. "You're the strongest person I know. You're going to be okay." "How can you know that?" "Because I know you. And because love doesn't die just because the person you love does. You'll carry me with you, and that will make you stronger than you realize." They stayed like that for a long time, William crying quietly while Catherine comforted him. It should have been the other way around, he thought. He should have been the one offering comfort. But that was Catherine. Even facing her own death, she was more concerned about taking care of him. Eventually, William lifted his head and wiped his eyes. "What do you need from me?" he asked. "How do I help you through this?" Catherine smiled, and it was her real smile this time, not the brave face she had been wearing for weeks. "Just be here with me. Help me do the things I want to do while I still can. And promise me that after I'm gone, you'll live. Really live, not just exist. Promise me you'll find happiness again." William wanted to protest, wanted to say he could never be happy without her, but he could see how important this was to her. "I promise," he said, even though he couldn't imagine how he would ever keep that promise. "Good," Catherine said. "Now, let's talk about going home next week. I want to make a list of everything I want to do while I'm there." For the rest of the morning, they made plans. Catherine wanted to cook one last meal in their kitchen, even if it was just scrambled eggs. She wanted to sleep in their own bed, surrounded by the quilt her grandmother had made. She wanted to sit in their garden and see the tulips she had planted. She wanted to watch the sunrise from their bedroom window one more time. These were simple things, ordinary things, but William understood they were also the most important things in the world. These would be their last shared experiences, the final memories they would make together. As afternoon approached, and Catherine grew tired, William helped her settle down for a nap. He planned to go home and start preparing the apartment for her visit, making sure everything was perfect for what they both knew would be her final homecoming. "William," Catherine called softly as he reached the door. "Yes. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for letting me." As William walked back through the hospital corridors, he felt something shift inside him. The fear and denial were still there, but they were joined now by something else, a sense of purpose. Catherine was going to die, and there was nothing he could do to change that. But he could control how they spent the time they had left. He could make sure her final days were filled with love and dignity and all the small joys that had made their life together so special. The robin was still working on her nest when William looked back at the hospital from the parking lot. "New beginnings," Catherine had said. William didn't know what his new beginning would look like without her, but he knew she was right about one thing. Love didn't die. The love they shared would live on, carrying him forward even when she couldn't be there beside him. For now, though, she was still here, and he was going to make every remaining moment count. William spent the entire weekend transforming their small apartment into a sanctuary. He moved furniture to make room for the wheelchair the hospital would provide, installed grab bars in the bathroom that the medical supply company had delivered, and arranged for a hospital bed to be set up in their bedroom beside their regular bed. Catherine had insisted she wanted to sleep in their own bed, but William knew they needed to be practical about her increasing limitations. The apartment felt strange with all the medical equipment, like their home had been invaded by reminders of Catherine's illness. But William tried to see it through her eyes instead of his own. She would be coming home for the first time in 3 weeks. Everything familiar would be precious to her. On Sunday afternoon, William found himself in their tiny garden behind the building. Mrs. Peterson had done an amazing job caring for Catherine's tulips. Green shoots had pushed through the dark soil, and, on several of them, William could see the bright promise of buds that would soon burst into color. Red, yellow, purple, and white. Catherine had planted a rainbow of spring hope last fall. They're beautiful, aren't they? William turned to find Mrs. Peterson standing beside him, a watering can in her hand. She was in her 70s, a retired school teacher who had lived in their building longer than anyone could remember. Her gray hair was always perfectly styled, and she had a way of noticing when people needed kindness. Catherine will be so happy to see them, William said. Thank you for taking such good care of them. Mrs. Peterson set down her watering can and studied William's face with the sharp eyes of someone who had spent decades reading young people's emotions. How is she really doing, dear? William had been getting this question a lot lately. Most people expected hopeful answers, updates about treatments, and positive thinking. But something about Mrs. Peterson's gentle directness made him want to tell the truth. She's dying, he said quietly. The doctors say weeks, maybe a month or 2 if we're lucky. Mrs. Peterson nodded sadly. I thought it might be something like that. She's such a lovely girl. Much too young for such a terrible thing. They stood together in comfortable silence, looking at Catherine's garden. William found it oddly comforting to share this moment with someone who had known Catherine during their happy times, who remembered her laughing in the hallways, and bringing leftover cookies to share with neighbors. She's coming home for a few days this week, William said. If she's strong enough. That's wonderful, Mrs. Peterson said warmly. Home is where she should be. Is there anything I can do to help? William was touched by the offer. Actually, yes. Catherine mentioned wanting to thank you properly for taking care of her garden. Would you maybe come by and visit with her when she's home? I think she'd really like that. Of course, dear. I'd be honored. Monday morning arrived with unseasonably warm weather, as if spring had decided to make an early appearance just for Catherine. William arrived at the hospital to find her dressed and sitting in the bedside chair, looking more alert than she had in days. Ready to go home? He asked, though he could see the answer in her bright expression. I've been ready since I woke up, Catherine said. Dr. Martinez just needs to go over my medications one more time, and then we can leave. The discharge process took longer than expected, but finally, they were in William's car, driving the familiar route home. Catherine had insisted on sitting in the front seat instead of lying down in the back, and she spent the entire drive looking out the window like she was seeing their neighborhood for the first time. Everything looks so green, she said as they turned onto Maple Street. When did all the trees start budding? While you were in the hospital, William replied. Spring happened without us noticing. Their building looked exactly the same, but William saw it differently now, knowing this might be the last time Catherine would see it. The red brick facade, the white front door that always stuck a little, the row of mailboxes where their names appeared side by side. William Chun and Catherine Rodriguez, apartment 3B. William had arranged for a wheelchair to be waiting in the lobby, but Catherine insisted on walking. She moved slowly, stopping to rest on each landing, but she made it to their floor under her own power. William had his key ready, but Catherine stopped him before he could unlock their door. Wait, she said, slightly out of breath. I want to remember this moment. Coming home. William watched as she touched the door frame, running her fingers over the wood like she was memorizing its texture. She had done similar things at the hospital, touching walls, studying ceiling tiles, holding on to moments in ways she never had before her diagnosis. When they finally went inside, Catherine stood in their living room for a long time, just looking around. The apartment was small but filled with the life they had built together over 3 years. Photos covered one wall. Pictures from their first vacation together, snapshots from weekend hikes, the selfie they had taken when they moved in together. Books were stacked on every available surface because neither of them could resist buying new ones even though they had no shelf space left. It smells like home, Catherine said, breathing deeply. Hospital rooms all smell the same, like disinfectant and sadness. But this smells like us. William knew what she meant. Their apartment smelled like Catherine's vanilla candles and the lavender sachets she kept in all the drawers. It smelled like morning coffee and the herbs she grew on the kitchen windowsill. It smelled like the life they had shared. Catherine insisted on giving herself a tour of their own home, reacquainting herself with every room. In the kitchen, she opened cabinets and touched familiar dishes. In their bedroom, she sat on their bed and ran her hands over the quilt her grandmother had made, the one covered in stars that Catherine said reminded her of wishes. The medical equipment doesn't look too terrible, she said, glancing at the hospital bed William had tried to position as unobtrusively as possible. We don't have to use it if you don't want to, William said quickly. No, it's practical. And practical is good. Catherine lay back on their regular bed, staring up at the ceiling. But I want to sleep here tonight. In our bed, with you beside me. William's throat tightened. They hadn't slept in the same bed since Catherine was admitted to the hospital. He had missed the weight of her beside him, the sound of her breathing, the way she always stole the covers without realizing it. Of course, he said. They spent the afternoon doing ordinary things that felt extraordinary because they both knew how finite they were. Catherine sat at their kitchen table while William made her favorite tea, Earl Grey with honey. She couldn't eat much anymore, but she managed half a piece of toast and proclaimed it the best thing she had tasted in weeks. Around 3 o'clock, Mrs. Peterson knocked on their door with a plate of homemade cookies and a small bouquet of daffodils from her own garden. I thought you might like some flowers while you wait for your tulips to bloom, Mrs. Peterson said, presenting the bright yellow blooms to Catherine. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. They're perfect. Thank you so much. The three of them sat together in the living room, Mrs. Peterson sharing stories about the neighborhood happenings Catherine had missed. Mr. Thompson from the first floor had adopted a kitten. The Johnsons were expecting their first baby in the summer. The coffee shop on the corner had started serving Catherine's favorite blueberry muffins again. These were small pieces of news about people Catherine barely knew, but William could see how much it meant to her to feel connected to the world beyond hospitals and illness. For an hour, she was just Catherine again, not cancer patient Catherine. She was a young woman interested in her neighbors' lives, laughing at Mrs. Peterson's stories about her mischievous cat. After Mrs. Peterson left, Catherine asked William to take her outside to see the garden. The afternoon sun was warm on their faces as they stood among the emerging flowers. The tulip buds were bigger than they had been just a few days before, some of them showing hints of the colors they would soon reveal. Red ones, Catherine said, pointing to a cluster of buds. Those will be red. And yellow ones over there. Your rainbow garden, William said, remembering how excited she had been when she planned it. I'm glad I planted them, Catherine said. Even if I don't get to see them bloom fully, I'm glad I put them in the ground. Something beautiful will come from that. William understood she wasn't just talking about tulips. That evening, they watched the sunset from their bedroom window, something they had done countless times before but never with this sense of urgency and gratitude. Catherine was tired but fighting sleep, not wanting to waste any of their precious time together. Tell me about the first time you saw me, she said as they lay in their bed, her head on William's shoulder. It was a story he had told before, but never under these circumstances. You were ordering coffee at Sunrise Cafe, and you couldn't decide between a regular coffee and a fancy latte. You stood there for 5 minutes reading the menu like it was the most important decision you'd ever make. Catherine laughed softly. I was trying to impress you. I thought you were cute, but I didn't know what kind of coffee cute guys liked. So you ordered both. 2 different drinks, and then I was too embarrassed to drink either one. I sat at that table for an hour, just stirring them and stealing glances at you. I noticed, William said. I kept making excuses to walk past your table. I think I refilled the napkin dispenser 6 times that morning. When you finally came over to ask if I was okay, I was so nervous I forgot my own name for a second. But you remembered your phone number when I asked for it. Lucky for both of us. They lay in the darkness, holding each other and remembering their beginning while facing their ending. William listened to Catherine's breathing, trying to memorize the rhythm of it, the way it changed when she was falling asleep. William, Catherine's voice was drowsy. I'm scared. It was the first time she had admitted this, and William felt his heart break a little more. Catherine had been so strong, so determined to face everything with grace and optimism. But here in the dark, in the safety of their own bed, she could finally be vulnerable. I'm scared too, he whispered. Not about dying, Catherine clarified. I think I've made peace with that. I'm scared about leaving you alone. I'm scared you won't be okay without me. William wanted to promise her he would be fine, but he had learned to be honest with Catherine about the hard things. I don't know how I'll be okay without you, but I promise I'll try. I promise I'll keep living. That's all I need to hear. Catherine fell asleep first, her breathing evening out into the peaceful rhythm William remembered from their life before cancer. He stayed awake for hours, watching her sleep, trying to store up this moment. Catherine safe in his arms, in their own bed, surrounded by everything that made up their shared life. When morning came, Catherine woke up smiling. I had the most wonderful dream, she said. We were old and gray, sitting on a porch swing. You had terrible gray hair sticking up everywhere, and I was wearing this ridiculous flowered dress. But we were holding hands and laughing about something I can't remember. Maybe that's what heaven is like, William said. All our best moments, waiting for us. Maybe, Catherine agreed. Or maybe it was just my brain giving me a gift, a glimpse of the life we would have had. They spent Tuesday morning doing more ordinary things that had become precious. Catherine insisted on making breakfast, even though it exhausted her. She scrambled eggs while William made coffee, and they ate together at their small table like they had hundreds of times before. But William noticed Catherine only managed a few bites before pushing her plate away. I used to love food so much, she said wistfully. Remember how I always wanted to try new restaurants? How I'd spend hours planning elaborate dinner parties we never actually threw. You made the best lasagna I've ever had, William said. Even my Italian grandmother would have been jealous. I should write down the recipe for you. All my recipes, actually, so you won't live on takeout forever. The idea of Catherine writing recipes for William to use after she was gone was both heartbreaking and touching. It was such a Catherine thing to do, thinking about practical ways to take care of him even when she wouldn't be there to do it herself. They spent the rest of the morning going through Catherine's things, not because she was ready to give them away, but because she wanted to tell William the stories behind them. The bracelet her sister had given her for her 18th birthday. The book of poetry she had carried through college. The scarf she had bought on their weekend trip to the mountains. The one she said made her feel sophisticated. I want you to give this to your next girlfriend, Catherine said, holding up a necklace William had given her for their first anniversary. Catherine, no, listen to me. Someday, when you're ready, you're going to fall in love again. And when you do, I want you to give her this necklace and tell her it comes with a story about how much you're capable of loving someone. William couldn't imagine loving anyone else, couldn't picture giving Catherine's necklace to another woman. But he could see how important this was to her, this idea that he would find happiness again. Okay, he said, but only if you promise me something. What? Promise me you'll always be with me somehow. Even when you're gone, promise me you'll find a way to let me know you're okay. Catherine smiled. I promise. I'll send you signs. Maybe through the tulips, or through dreams, or maybe I'll learn how to make the lights flicker like in those movies you hate. I don't hate those movies, William protested. You hate those movies. But you watch them with me anyway because you love me. I love you more than anything. I know. And I love you too. More than I ever thought it was possible to love someone. By Wednesday, Catherine was noticeably weaker. She spent most of the day on the couch, wrapped in her grandmother's quilt, watching the birds outside their window. William sat beside her, sometimes talking, sometimes just holding her hand in comfortable silence. Dr. Martinez called in the afternoon to check on how Catherine was doing at home. William stepped into the kitchen to take the call, not wanting Catherine to hear the medical details they discussed. How much longer? William asked quietly. It's hard to say exactly, Dr. Martinez replied. But I think you should be prepared for it to happen soon. Maybe this weekend, maybe early next week. Is she in pain? Not too much. The medications seem to be helping. Good. Call me immediately if that changes, or if you need anything at all. And William? You're doing the right thing, letting her be home. These moments you're sharing are precious. When William returned to the living room, Catherine was looking out at the garden. The first tulip had bloomed overnight, a bright red flower that seemed to glow in the afternoon sunlight. Look, she said softly. The first one opened. They spent the rest of the afternoon watching that single tulip, talking about spring and new beginnings, and the way beautiful things always found a way to emerge from dark places. Catherine seemed peaceful, more at ease than she had been in weeks. That night, as they prepared for bed, Catherine asked William to help her into the hospital bed instead of their regular bed. I think it will be easier, she said. I don't want to keep you awake if I have a bad night. But William understood what she was really saying. She was getting sicker, and she was trying to spare him the hardship of watching her struggle during the night. I'll sleep right here beside you, he said, indicating the regular bed just a few feet away. Good. I want you close. As Catherine settled into the hospital bed, she looked small and fragile against the white sheets. But her eyes were still bright, still full of the love and warmth that had captured William's heart 3 years ago. Tomorrow I want to see the sunrise, she said. Will you wake me up early? Of course. And William? Thank you for bringing me home. These have been the best 3 days I've had in months. Thank you for coming home with me. Catherine fell asleep, holding William's hand across the small gap between their beds. William lay awake most of the night, listening to her breathe and watching the way the moonlight fell across her face. He had the strange feeling that something was ending, that this peaceful homecoming was Catherine's way of saying goodbye to the life they had built together. But he wasn't ready to let go. Not yet.